The champagne flowed freely at the Madison Country Club, where my father's retirement party was in full swing. After 35 years at First National Bank, he was finally stepping down as executive vice president, and everyone who mattered in banking was there to celebrate. The grand ballroom sparkled with crystal chandeliers, reflecting off the designer suits and diamond jewelry of Chicago's banking elite. Everyone except me, apparently. I stood in the corner, nursing my sparkling water, watching my brother James work the room in his perfectly tailored suit. He'd followed Dad's footsteps, climbing the corporate ladder at the same bank, while I'd chosen to pursue my own path in financial technology. The contrast between us couldn't have been more stark, him in his $5,000 Tom Ford suit, me in my simple black dress from a boutique that would make my mother cringe. "Charlotte." Mom's voice carried that familiar mix of joy and disappointment as she approached, air kissing my cheeks. "You finally made it. Though couldn't you have worn something more appropriate?" She glanced disapprovingly at my outfit, probably calculating its cost against James's designer wear. Her own Chanel suit probably cost more than what they thought I made in a month. "I came straight from work," I replied, though I didn't mention that work meant running a company that was about to reshape the entire banking industry. They still thought I was coding in some tiny startup office, struggling to make ends meet. In their minds, I was the cautionary tale, the daughter who'd thrown away a promising career in traditional banking to chase some Silicon Valley dream. Speaking of work, James sauntered over, champagne glass in hand, his Rolex catching the light. "Still running that failing startup? What is it again, some kind of payment app?" His smirk was perfectly practiced, the same one he'd worn when he made junior partner while I was playing with computers in my small office. The irony made me smile. If only he knew that his precious bank's payment system ran on my company's infrastructure. That every transaction he bragged about processing went through servers I'd designed. "Something like that," I replied, checking my phone. 20 minutes until the announcement that would change everything. "You know," James continued, enjoying his favorite sport of needling his little sister, "Dad's retirement package includes a significant stock option grant. The bank's share price hit a record high last week. Guess that's what happens when you work for a real financial institution instead of chasing pipe dreams." I bit back a response. The stock price was about to become very interesting, but not in the way James expected. My phone buzzed, a message from my CFO. "Everything's in place. Board approval confirmed. Ready when you are." "Charlotte, honey." Dad joined our little group, his face flushed with celebration and probably a few too many glasses of champagne. "You know, you could still come work for us. James could use a good technical person in his department. It's never too late to get back on the right path." The right path. That's what they'd called it when I'd graduated from MIT with honors in computer science, and they'd tried to steer me toward a junior analyst position at the bank. The safe choice. The family choice. Instead, I'd taken my trust fund, the smallest of the 3 siblings of course, and poured it into developing a revolutionary payment processing system. "Actually, Dad," I started to say, but was interrupted by a sudden chorus of notification sounds throughout the ballroom. Phones started buzzing simultaneously, creating a symphony of confusion. The familiar chime of news alerts filled the air, followed by confused murmurs. "That's odd," James frowned, pulling out his phone. "The banking app isn't working." His fingers frantically tapped the screen. "System must be down." More voices joined the chorus of confusion. "Line's down too. Can't access my account. What's happening?" The party's comfortable atmosphere of self-congratulation began to crack. I watched as my father's retirement party transformed into an impromptu crisis meeting. Banking executives huddled in corners, furiously typing on their phones. The champagne glasses stopped clinking as worry lines appeared on perfectly Botoxed foreheads. "Must be a system-wide outage," James announced importantly, loosening his tie. "I should call the IT department. This is exactly why we need to upgrade our legacy systems." He trailed off as he realized his phone's signal had disappeared. "Oh, it's not an outage," I said calmly, taking a sip of my water. "The systems are being temporarily suspended for the ownership transition. Standard protocol during a major acquisition." "Ownership transition?" Dad's head snapped up. "What are you talking about? First National isn't being acquired. We would know if." Right on cue, the large screens around the ballroom meant to display a tribute to Dad's career flickered to life with breaking news. Breaking. First National Bank acquired by QuantumPay in historic $62 billion deal. The silence that fell over the ballroom was deafening. I could practically hear the gears turning in everyone's heads as they processed the news. James's face had gone from smug to sheet white, his perfectly manicured hand gripping his useless phone. QuantumPay. Dad whispered, his retirement speech forgotten. That's impossible. They're just a startup. They couldn't possibly. His voice trailed off as he stared at the screens, where financial analysts were already calling it the tech acquisition of the decade. Mom's social smile had frozen on her face. Charlotte, dear, isn't that the company you were working with? Perhaps you know something about this. Before I could answer, Mr. Harrison, the bank CEO, burst through the crowd. James, what the hell is going on? The board never approved this. His face was red, expensive silk pocket square askew. I don't know, sir, James stammered, looking nothing like the confident executive director he'd been moments ago. This must be some kind of mistake. Our stock was just rated as a strong buy yesterday. I cleared my throat. Actually, the board approved it 20 minutes ago. Unanimous vote. The papers are already signed. Every head in our vicinity turned toward me. The weight of their stares would have crushed me 3 years ago, back when I was still trying to prove myself at family dinners. How would you know that? James snapped, but his voice wavered. I pulled out my own phone, the only one in the room still working, and opened an email. As I was on the call. While my CFO was. I was a bit busy getting ready for Dad's party. Dad's glass slipped from his fingers, hitting the marble floor with a crash that echoed through the now silent ballroom. Charlotte, what are you saying? I'm saying, I replied, straightening my simple black dress, the same one I'd worn to sign the preliminary acquisition papers last week, that QuantumPay isn't just a startup anymore. We've been preparing for this for months. Your board members were quite impressed with our technology integration proposal. James laughed, but it sounded hollow. You expect us to believe that your little payment app. That little payment app processed over $2 trillion in transactions last year, I cut in. Which you'd know if you'd actually read any of the reports I sent to the bank's technology committee. The same committee that kept insisting your legacy systems were good enough. The screen switched to showing QuantumPay's corporate profile. There was my headshot listed as founder and CEO. The champagne glasses that had been hovering in shocked hands started dropping one by one. But the money, Mom stuttered. How did you? Remember that worthless patent Dad said I was wasting time on in college? The one for blockchain-based payment processing? Google tried to buy it for $50 million. I smiled at their stunned faces. I turned them down. Built it myself instead. Mr. Harrison pushed forward again, his face now an alarming shade of purple. This is outrageous. I'll fight this in court. You can't just. Actually, we can. And we did. I pulled up another email. Your signature is right here along with the entire board's. The integration begins Monday. The room erupted in chaos. Banking executives who'd been ignoring me all evening suddenly couldn't take their eyes off me. My phone buzzed again, this time with breaking news alerts about First National stock price soaring on the acquisition announcement. Why? Dad's voice was barely a whisper. Why didn't you tell us? I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time that evening. Would you have believed me? When I tried to tell you about the security flaws in the bank system last year, James said I was just jealous of his success. James flinched. Charlotte, Oh, don't worry, brother dear, I said, my voice sweet. You'll keep your job. Though you might want to update your resume to include experience with modern payment systems. You're going to need it. The next hour at the Madison Country Club was a blur of activity. The retirement party had transformed into an impromptu shareholders meeting, with board members huddled in corners making frantic phone calls to their brokers. The lavish dinner buffet went untouched, the carefully planned speeches forgotten. I found myself in the center of a storm I'd spent 3 years creating. Senior executives who'd previously ignored me at bank functions were now hovering nearby, their business cards appearing mysteriously on my table. Even the wait staff seemed to sense the shift in power, offering me fresh drinks before anyone else. Miss Charlotte. A nervous-looking junior executive approached. I'm from the technology integration team. I just wanted to say your blockchain implementation is brilliant. I've been following your patents for years. Thank you, I smiled, recognizing him as one of the few who'd supported my security proposals last year. Stop by my office next week. We'll need good people who understand both sides of the merger. His face lit up, but before he could respond, James shouldered his way through the crowd. His perfect hair was slightly disheveled now, his confident swagger replaced by something closer to panic. We need to talk, he hissed, grabbing my elbow. Now. I allowed him to lead me to a quiet corner of the ballroom, noting how the crowd parted before us like water. Amazing how quickly things change when the power dynamics shift. What's your game here? James demanded, his voice low and intense. Is this some kind of revenge? Because if you think you can just walk in and dismantle everything Dad built. You mean everything you expected to inherit? I countered, keeping my voice level. The bank isn't being dismantled, James. It's being modernized. Something I tried to tell you was necessary 2 years ago. His face flushed. That was different. You were just a consultant then. No, I was the CEO of a company trying to prevent a security disaster. But you and the board were too busy celebrating record profits to listen. I pulled out my phone, showing him the security audit from last year. Remember this? The one you dismissed as fear-mongering? James's eyes scanned the document, his face growing paler. Those vulnerabilities, they're still there? Most of them. Though we've already patched the critical ones during the preliminary integration. You're welcome, by the way. That ransomware attack last month? It would have succeeded if we hadn't quietly upgraded your firewall protocols. He slumped against the wall, his perfect posture finally breaking. Dad's going to kill me. I told him those systems were secure. Dad's not going to kill anyone, I sighed. Though he might want to rethink his retirement timing. Speaking of Dad, I spotted him across the room, sitting alone at what was supposed to be the head table. Mom was nowhere to be seen, probably hiding in the powder room processing the shock. The sight of him there looking suddenly old and lost made my chest tight. Look, I told James, softening my tone slightly. This isn't about revenge. The bank needs this merger to survive the next decade. You know that even if you won't admit it. And I suppose you'll want me gone? His voice was bitter, but I could hear the fear underneath. Actually, I want you exactly where you are. That got his attention. You know the traditional banking side better than anyone. We need that expertise during the transition. Though you might want to take some coding classes. Before he could respond, a commotion near the entrance caught our attention. Mom had emerged from hiding, and she wasn't alone. She was practically dragging Mr. Phillips, my old programming teacher from high school, into the ballroom. Tell them, she was saying, her voice carrying across the room. Tell them what you told me about Charlotte's project. Mr. Phillips, looking uncomfortable in his old suit, cleared his throat. I was just telling your mother about the coding competition Charlotte won in senior year. The one that got her the MIT scholarship. The one you said was a waste of time, I reminded Mom gently. Because it wasn't a proper extracurricular for college applications. Mom's carefully maintained composure cracked slightly. I didn't understand. I still don't understand all this technology. But Mr. Phillips says your system, it's revolutionizing how money moves. Something like that, I said, watching as Dad slowly made his way over to our growing family cluster. Charlotte, he said, his voice rough. The board chairman just called me. Said they've been secretly courting quantum pay for months. Said you're the reason the bank stock hasn't crashed from all those tech company threats. I nodded. The acquisition talks started after we saved 3 regional banks from collapse. They were all using our emergency protocols by then, but quietly. No one wanted to admit they needed help from a startup. Dad ran a hand through his silver hair. All those times you tried to meet with me about system upgrades were attempts to save you from exactly what was happening in the industry, I finished. But you were all so convinced that traditional banking was untouchable. And now you own the bank, James said flatly. No, I corrected him. Now we've merged with the bank. There's a difference. One that will matter a lot to the thousands of employees wondering about their jobs right now. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with another news alert. The screens around the ballroom updated with the latest headlines. Quantum Pay First National Merger promises no layoffs, focus on technology integration. The tension in the room shifted slightly. I could see shoulders relaxing, worried whispers turning to tentative speculation about opportunities. There's something else you should know, I said, looking at my family. Dad's retirement party? Still happening. Just, with a slight modification. I nodded to the event coordinator who had been waiting for my signal. The screens changed again, now showing a split image. Dad's official retirement photo alongside the announcement of his new position as senior advisory board member for the merged entity. If you want it, I added quickly, seeing his stunned expression. The board thinks having you involved in the transition would help maintain customer confidence. And I could use your experience. For a long moment, Dad just stared at the screens. Then slowly a smile began to spread across his face. Advisory board, huh? Does this mean I still get to keep my corner office? Actually, I grinned, we're moving to a new building. Corner offices for everyone. With better coffee machines. The tension broke. James actually laughed. Mom dabbed at her eyes with an expensive handkerchief and Dad pulled me into a tight hug. I'm sorry, he whispered, for not believing in you. It's okay, I whispered back. You can make up for it by helping me explain blockchain to the shareholders. As if to punctuate the moment, all the phones in the room suddenly chimed in unison. The banking apps were back online, now sporting a new interface that merged First National's classic logo with Quantum Pay's modern design. The future of banking had arrived. And this time, everyone was paying attention. Now, I said, raising my voice to address the room, I believe we were in the middle of celebrating something. I gestured to the waiters who began circulating with fresh champagne. To Dad's retirement and new beginnings. The party resumed, but with a distinctly different energy. Instead of mourning the end of an era, we were celebrating the start of something new. Something that bridged the gap between tradition and innovation, between old money and new technology. As I watched Dad being congratulated by a mix of veteran bankers and tech entrepreneurs, I couldn't help but smile. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's showing them a better way forward. Even if it takes crashing a retirement party to do it.